Lady. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Cultural Studies podcast. My name is Toby Miller, and my guest today is.
Karin Kirk.
Thanks so much for being with us, Karen. Before I get on to my cliched question, I always have to ask people about the pot plants I can see behind them. Now, is this a real background or is
Yeah,
it's actually there? So there are 5 or 6 pot plants.
they are. Yes,
They look
I'm
pretty,
a.
spec- they look pretty spectacular. Who's got the green thumb?
That's me. I love all forms of gardening, and it's winter here in Montana, so pot plants are what we got.
They're inside and they're safe.
Oh yeah, and there's skylights up above them, so they have a little spa up here in my office. So
Nice, lovely.
yeah,
So the question I put to all my guests really nowadays is to inquire what's currently dynamizing, preoccupying, impeding, interesting them. What's going on for you?
such a great question. It is the lack of winter in Montana. So I'm a professional ski instructor, is one of my little career paths, and I've been teaching skiing for almost 30 years here in Montana. This is my 27th year.
Wow.
And one of the things I like about living in Montana is that in some parts of the world, when it snows, some people cheer and some people complain. But in Montana, everybody cheers because it's our water. And you need water for fishing, for irrigation, to keep away the wildfires, and yes, to go skiing. So we've had a dry winter that like no one can ever remember. And I've been working in climate change my whole career, and we know that this is part of our future, and it is wild to see it happening. But now everyone's really noticing the skiing's terrible. The water, the snowpack, the water content of the snowpack is quite low, and so it's real. Climate change is real, turns out. So yes, it impedes my skiing, but it also feeds into my work about climate impacts are terrible, but it is actually helpful when we notice them because that motivates us to take action.
Now, so presumably this means many fewer vacationers, less tourism money coming into the state.
Yep.
Any chance of you're letting President Trump know that there seems to be this thing called climate change?
He, I don't think he cares.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think,
assuming you have a hotline to the White House or a
no.
cold line.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather tell our state leaders and our utility company, um, because they're making big decisions around climate that affect Montana and the world. I think Trump is a lost cause on that, but there are many other levers that we can push.
Right.
So that's where I'm focused.
Now, you mentioned skiing instructing, and I'm going to provide a link to your fantastic website, which is
Hmm.
great as a resource
Oh,
for all sorts of things.
thank you.
And one of your articles that I really like is about your history, professional occupational history.
Hmm.
You're a geologist and a
Yep.
climate journalist and a skiing
Yep.
instructor, amongst other things. Now, I used to be friends with geologists many years ago. We didn't have a falling out, we just stopped living in the same place.
Uh-huh.
And their main thing was going to places to dig them up and extract oil or diamonds or gold. And this meant they were either really flush with money
Yeah.
or they were unemployed.
Right.
And one of the things you write about very evocatively is how, as a young woman, you're involved in drilling and just
Hmm.
how tough it is in every sense. I wondered if you could tell us a
Yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah. I really enjoyed writing. So that was an essay I wrote about a year ago, and it was really fun to think about, to reconjure up that time in my life. So
Right.
I went to a private liberal arts college, and it was a lovely experience. Some might say country club. It was rigorous, but it was lovely. So you graduate and you have not lived at all, and you have this geology degree that many geology majors study geology because you get to go outside. You do field trips, you go camping, you go to Colorado, you do amazing things. Regular life is not that. So I get a job on a drilling rig that's the cleaning up kind of drilling. So you're in the messiest places you can imagine
Right.
with a very roughshod crew. I am 21 and they say, "You're in charge of this." And I'm like, really? You sure that's not a mistake? What a way to grow up. Like I loved the science. Like I was well prepared academically and like at ground zero in every other way. And in many ways, I was lucky to escape terrible things. You know, a lot of young women, as naive as I was, bad things happen. Um,
Right.
and I do
Sexual
feel
violence.
absolutely, yeah, you're surrounded by men, and and there's a weird power balance, and
Yeah.
it's our own company, and it's subcontractors, and it's the people running these sites, oil refineries. You know, you're hanging out in truck stops. You know, it was a so I learned a lot. It was a great life lesson. It was amazing collection of swear words that really
Right.
expanded my mind. And I do count myself as lucky that I got out of that with only good things. Because that's a wild work environment. But it definitely made me the fierce environmentalist that I am now, seeing that unbelievable mess everywhere we went. Yeah.
You, in that same piece, I think we're talking about the right article here, talk
Hmm.
about you and your husband getting solar panels on the roof of your car. That's
On
a
the roof of our house. Yeah.
roof of your house, sorry, and also having
Yeah.
uh,
And an electric car.
an electric car. I
Yeah.
guess we're still waiting for cars with solar panels.
I mean, it's just not enough area on the car. You'd have to have a
Well,
very
a big
broad car.
car, maybe an RV.
Yeah, maybe a little like deployable solar sail or something like that. Sure.
RV, EV. Yeah, I like
Mhm.
the sound of it.
Yes, that's our dream retirement vehicle. Yes.
So you say that this shifted you towards environmentalism, this
Yeah.
experience in the early 20s, apart from learning some swear words and working out how to navigate predatory, violent masculinity.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that conversion process. I mean, what did you
Yeah.
see? What did you do? What did you feel that made you rethink things a bit?
Yeah. Again, I'm really grateful for that experience. So, you know, you graduate from college with a geology degree and you're celebrating Earth Day and you're doing all those sort of great things that young outdoor people should be doing.
Right,
Um, The thing about the messes that I saw, so okay, every community has a gas station. Underneath all those gas stations are multiple tanks containing all the grades of gasoline and diesel and whatever else. And around the time I graduated from college, almost all of them were leaking. It was a perfect time to be a young geologist because there was a massive need to replace every underground tank in the country. So they were hiring every geologist, even clueless ones like me. And so but you know, a gas station is generally you kind of have a good view of it. Like you can get gas, you can get a ice cream sandwich, you can go to the bathroom, you can take a break. Like, you know, it's your local place that you would stop on your way to school or whatever. Like you kind of have like a nice community association with the gas station. But then when you realize all of them underneath there are contaminating the groundwater, and then that groundwater is going wherever it's going to go,
yeah.
into your drinking water supply, into your wetland, under a playground. And then you have this underground view, which y'all just love, right? The underground view of the world of like, oh my God, this is awful. These are everywhere and they are leaking everywhere. And like, yeah, we can clean up the leaks, which was really great science and engineering, but we're still going to use this stuff every day. And that was the early 90s. You know, EVs were way in the future. And so the thing that I hated was knowing how terrible these are for decades, having that like geologic insight of the pollution happening under our feet and not having a way to avoid it. Like you're living in this like guilty place. But
And
now that's changed.
go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, when our neighbors a few doors down got EVs, and I said, "What's the best part of having an EV?" Am I allowed to swear?
Yep.
He said, "The best part about having an EV is driving by the Exxon station and saying, 'Fuck you, Exxon.'" And I thought, "Oh, that is definitely my number."
I love it. I love it. Well, you know, it's funny because I think also there's a wonderful Bruce Springsteen line about driving by the giant Exxon sign that brings this fair city light. I've always loved it.
Right?
I've always loved it. And you're right that they become these incredible icons. Of course, here in Mexico, as you know, national identity for the last 80 years has been wrapped up in having nationalized the oil industry and
Yep.
gotten rid of Uncle Sam. And how was this done? This was done by your great grandmother raffling the chickens in her backyard
Hmm.
in popular local subscription in order to
Interesting.
socialize petroleum. So one of the
Huh.
challenges for the environmental movement in a place like this is that this is really a structure of feeling of everyday people who
Right.
all have family stories about contributing
Yeah.
to taking over the oil industry. So one of the smart things that NGOs concerned with the climate change, but also indigenous groups do here, is not to attack big oil, because that's to attack the Mexican people in some
You
sense.
gotta, yeah.
They just say, this is what needs to happen next. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? It's really
I do.
interesting in a way that,
Yep.
you know, obviously in Western Europe or the United States, we need to attack these bastards
Yeah.
because they're the ones who are paying for lies, craven lies, being told
Yep.
all over the
Yep.
world every day. So,
That's right.
but I do get the romance of it in a place like this or in the Bruce Springsteen line.
Yeah.
And what you
Yeah.
said about these are our neighbors, they're where we meet people and so on.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
so often it's that invisible side of capitalism and of environmental
Right.
spoliation that is so terrifying and that you've alluded to. What don't we see when we pull up at
Right.
the Bowser, when we pull up at the pump? So
Exactly.
tell us about the trajectory from that to being an environmental journalist, if I can use that expression.
Yeah.
This is, I think the New York Times, which doesn't seem to have it anymore, set up an
Mm.
environmental beat in 69 or 70 when there was the terrible oil spill off Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
But basically, I don't think people talked about environmental communication or environmental journalism until this century, pretty much. Does that seem
Oh,
about
yeah.
right to you?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And even that, like the idea of science communication as a profession is even newer than that. I'd say within the last 10 to 15 years.
So how did you
And so,
get into the game? How did you move from being the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 21-year-old digging around under Exxon signs to see
right.
the globe to doing what you do now?
Yeah. Well, I went after a couple years of doing the drilling, which was great. Then I went back into more of an academic track. Did quite a lot of teaching. Actually, really loved. I went back as an instructor to the same university where I did my undergraduate. And now that I had like that amount of industry experience, it was fun to sort of bring in like what geologists can do in the real world aside from just being more college professors. And so that I really enjoyed that. Then I went back to graduate school and came here to Montana. So that was all on the East Coast in upstate New York. And then Montana was graduate school, professional skiing, and sort of building a life out here with my husband. And then, yeah, after graduate school, I gotta say, I was probably more interested in skiing for a while, and that was great. I made a little like side career out of that. And then about 15 years ago, decided to sort of take a flying leap into working freelance. I always love people and communicating, and teaching in the classroom and teaching skiing gave me a sense of people and that everything runs through people. There's no amount of science that is like external to that. And scientists sort of famously are, not great at that. And now our scientific culture is really changing. And that's why science communication is now like an official, graduate program or class or career. And so I kind of lucked out in that I decided to do this just as that track kind of birthed itself. And I like, wow, here I am on the very much ground floor. And that was great because then you can kind of make it up as you go and you find other people doing the same thing. Had a lot of fun at conferences, like as a free agent communicator, finding like-minded people. And so it was really fun in the beginning. A little wild because you're just kind of, again, making it up as you go. But for the most part, it was a really positive experience. And then I started looking for like, all right, where can I really make this a more stable career? And that's probably the last, I don't know, 10 years have been more traditional, less like branching out, seeing what works, and more like, okay, I'm going to make this an actual job with like editors that I write for regularly and more predictable schedule.
So here's my big journalism question. There are more alphabetic people in the world than ever before this century.
Hmm.
There are many more
Yep.
people reading. And when they read, they want to read about the weather, about sports, about politics, about the economy,
Hmm.
love, I mean, all kinds of topics. In other words, at that level, it's a golden age for journalism.
Yeah.
If you look at it in terms of the global north, we are constantly getting lamentations for the end of journalism. Now, you got into the
Yeah.
game just at the point where being, you know, X from the daily whatever had
Yeah.
ceased to become a track. So you, in a sense, have always had to
Yeah.
be precarious and work this out for yourself. Is that right to say?
That's the perfect description. Actually, no one's ever put it like that. But yeah, and I was aware, like, oh, you're entering a career as it's kind of dying. But like you said, we're consuming information more than ever. You got to find the lane and the style. Yeah.
Beautiful. Now, one of the great things about your work, and this is what led me to you,
Hmm.
is that you are making a contribution at international levels, national levels,
Mhm.
and also municipal ones. In other words,
Yes.
you don't forget that you're in Montana.
I love it. Hmm.
So I wondered if we could start at the Montana level, right? And here,
Yeah.
thinking about, I think, a pretty recent I think,
Mhm.
very recent piece of yours.
Yeah, this week. Yeah.
Yes. Where it begins with, it's a bit like you know, well, not quite, but the Epstein files with redactions, right?
It is. No,
There's
that
this
was
document you've got
definite
hold of.
subplot. Yep.
It's almost completely redacted. This is
Yes.
called, Is Your Data Center Getting a Big Discount on Electricity? That's redacted. So could you talk about that research and this spectacular image that is
Isn't that
included,
amazing?
but also about writing locally, discovering things locally, speaking to
Yeah.
people locally?
I mean, the local stuff is really fun. Not everyone, wherever you live, you're going to have different things going on. And some people write to me and they're like, it's so boring. I live in a really liberal place. There's nothing to do, which I wouldn't totally agree with. But Montana is not such a liberal place at all.
Right.
And there's a lot going on with energy here. And we have sort of a giant and very polluting coal plant that's going through some transitions of ownership. And the preferred plan for this coal plant is to plug it into really big data centers, which would basically be using half of this entire coal plant. And for what? And so I think it really does. I do feel like my college graduation self of like, I think of that coal plant firing back up for the sake of these data centers. And I just think viscerally, no, no, that's not okay. I'm going to take all the skills and energy I have and say no. And so at the same time, I like to write for sort of a more national audience. And in this time, these two lanes have crossed because data center development and firing up fossil fuel plants is the topic. It's one of the biggest topics right now. And so it's been really fun because I can work on the Montana stuff and also be having a voice on this issue that's affecting everybody. And so the redactions, so it turns out if you want to learn about these letters of intent between your utility, who's like behind the scenes making agreements with these tech companies, they start out with this letter of intent. And it has to be a public process. Monopoly utilities can't just go willy-nilly doing whatever they want. So they go through a public utilities commission. Anyone can go to any public utilities commission. These are public, taxpayer-funded government entities, and you can look at these documents and look at these like otherwise pretty boring things. So I drill down and they're like, look at all these documents. They're pretty much just black rectangles. You get like the letterhead and you get like one sentence here and there and page after page after page of just blackness. And then, I told that to my editor at Yale Climate Connections and she gasped. She was like, oh my God, we got to see those. And like just what you said, because right now with the Epstein stuff, we're really cued in to like these redactions or something that are kind of alarming. And so you have another version of that. And I was so happy when that story ran and these like redacted documents are right there at the headline because it tells the whole story. You don't even need to read the article. Just look at that and you're like, well, that's bullshit.
To be fair to the New York Times, they've done some good stories about this. One about Ireland
Yep.
uh, and Chile. Sorry, one about Ireland and Mexico, one about Chile. And the one
Hmm.
about Mexico is about places very close to where I live, where
Mm.
there is amazing photography and interviews with local people who are suffering
Hmm.
terribly from power outages, doctors can't do their work, and water
Yeah.
shortages, right? And it's
Yeah.
dramatic. The
Yeah.
best part is when a local official is interviewed who looks like he's about 5.5 weeks old. Anyway, he's wearing a suit. And when it's pointed out to him that there are, babies with gastroenteritis as part of
Mm.
their existence, there are doctors who, in the middle of performing operations, don't have any juice,
Mm.
all the rest of it. He actually says these are good problems to have
What?
because, it's boom time here in Querétaro. I mean,
Mm.
literally. I mean, as I say, he does look like he's 5.5 weeks old, and we shouldn't hold babies to account very much.
Right.
But
Just let
I
them
think
run things. Yeah.
one of the other things that interests me about this, and I'd like your view on that, is that all over the United States, there are people protesting the building of new data centers.
Yeah.
And it's bipartisan.
Yes. Isn't that
Lots of
great?
Republicans, you
Yep.
can see their electricity costs jacked up and their
Yeah.
electricity reliability going down. Can you talk
Right.
to me a bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, as a climate writer, pretty much the pattern of my life is research an article, write the article, get all excited about it, publish the article, and then get hate mail because, EVs are a hoax and da da da. And that's like this like funny rhythm of my life, and that's fine. I love to respond to hate mail because it's always interesting. I published this one and it's the opposite. Everybody hates data centers. I'm like, what am I doing on the side of everybody here? It's so nice to be in a lane with just about everybody else. And I like some of us that work in this field were like, kind of, what do we do with this now? We're on an issue where our main role isn't to like rebut misinformation or try to correct things or like tweak the narrative. We're like already there with everybody else. And so it's a sort of a place in terms of like the culture that most climate writers, most climate people have not been in yet, which is that you're on the very, very, very popular side of an issue, bipartisan, across classes, across geographies, which is great because we're going to need all this energy to push back.
And this is what's interesting to me. So even Trump has realized he's got to say
Yep.
something about all of this
Hmm.
and possibly
Hmm.
intervene. But
Hmm.
there's so much Wall Street money gushing
Yeah.
into this nonsense. I mean, the
Yeah.
spigot is well and truly on.
It is.
Okay, it'll get turned off at some point, but the devastation done to the way that
Yeah.
power and water function
Right.
is not going to go away. So I think
Well,
this is a
yes.
really big issue. Can you give us an idea of, I mean, the Montana reaction to this?
Montanans are famous for their fierce sense of privacy. Um, Very wary of people from the city, of big companies, of newness. And so data centers kind of tick all the wrong boxes for Montanans. The idea that these big tech companies kind of roll into town, AI in general, people aren't super happy with that either. And yeah, it's a state that's largely like empty, and we really want to keep it that way. So there's room for data centers, but people don't want them. Then again, you also have counties that have no major income streams that are rural, that are on hard times, and it's pretty hard for them to say no to these jobs and very appealing looking, property tax things, impact fees, money that gets fed into the community. We're having the same conversations about wind farms, big commercial scale wind farms being built in rural communities. It's tough because we would love the money, but also really don't want that disruption and really don't trust the people building those things. And so wind farms here are starting to be rebuffed And I think data centers may have a similar challenge. Wall Street has all the money in the world, but a county commission can do a lot.
Yeah.
Because the county commission is they have a lot of power. I mean, that's where these wind farms can fail at the county level, and that's where these data centers can go the same route. And so these are the conversations I'm having on the ground here with people like, well, what do we do? And so that I think is a pretty promising thing that where the local people really should get to decide. Like, I don't care how much money Meta has. We're still residents here. We can
Yeah.
elect people and we can make laws. And so I don't think we're down for the count. I think this is going to be really interesting. I really don't know how it's going to go. Also, I think the data companies are kind of they're overbidding these projects. They know that there's pushback now. I think the industry really gets that, and the utilities also realize it. And so if they need to build 3 data centers, they might start looking at 15 sites and these letters of intent and these scoping out properties and stuff like that. And so, I don't think everything that's in the plans is actually even going to get built. And then we'll see what happens with the public pushback. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really rapidly developing story.
Can we go back to what you said before we started talking about this in detail, which is that you're used to getting hate mail effectively
Yeah, yeah.
for what you write, but not about this. Without going
Mhm.
into excruciating detail that would cause you pain, is any of that critique gendered, vicious, nasty? Because you're a woman, because so many women journalists
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about that phenomenon.
Yep. Yes. Yes to all of those questions. Also, like before I launch into the real answer, I do have a real affinity for how people think and so I read the mail, I respond to it. It's really valuable and interesting to me. That's not to say that I would don't like, I'm not saying I like it, but knowing like what are the hot buttons, what kind of person is pushing back and how, that's useful because now I see how the public is perceiving different topics. And so, but talk about gender. So this was crazy. So I was on a panel with master's degree students at Yale. This was like a virtual Zoom panel. They're talking about environmental journalism. And the panel was myself and another writer for Yale Climate Connections who was male. And the students were doing a great job asking really thoughtful questions. And someone said, how do you deal with hate mail? And the male writer went first and he said, I don't get hate mail. I don't, no problem. And then over to me. And I was like, okay, now this is going to be a really interesting moment for all of us because I get hate mail with every article. What do you think is the difference between me and him? We write for the same publication on the same topics. What's the difference between me and him? And boy, did that room go quiet. And I didn't realize that. I didn't realize he didn't get hate mail. He didn't realize that I did get hate mail. It was a very authentic moment when you really see that gender is at the center of a lot of this, unfortunately.
So women being knowledgeable and forceful, not okay. And I'm assuming that
Not okay.
without being certain about the gender of the writers who contact you, it's
Oh,
mostly
they're men. I'm certain. They sign their letters very proudly.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and it's
So,
usually the tone of it, and it's actually not hate mail. It's usually condescending, and they're saying that I'm wrong because really don't understand this stuff. I didn't, learn enough about it, or I'm not smart enough. And that's why I always answer them because of course, first of all, if I've made a mistake, I absolutely want to know. And I don't care if it's framed in a condescending way. Like I absolutely want to know if I make a mistake. But none of these letters have ever pointed out a mistake that I've actually made. And so then, of course, I write back. And yeah, and I always respond and I say, oh, interesting question about whatever it is. Off EVs, man, EVs really have triggered people. And so I probably answered more questions about EVs than anything else. And yeah, I had some terrifying moments like I did it wrong. And then I go back and I check the math and I'm like, no, I did it right. And and yeah, so I always do respond. And I rarely get like a re-response. Once I correct them and point out and send them maybe some references and, maybe a little lacing of snark through my response, maybe not, depends. But I usually don't hear back. Sometimes, one time we went on for 2 weeks. And it was so frustrating that actually made me cry at one point, this guy.
Yeah.
So frustrating. But then I turned his email to me into an exercise that I teach in workshops. And I have people look at this email and just respond to it because it's ridiculous climate sort of denial nonsense. But I've turned it into an exercise that I've taught, I don't know, probably 25 times. And to me, that's such a triumph of someone trying to bring me down, trying to undermine my work or make me feel bad, and how I managed to turn that into something of value that I benefit from and lots of other people have benefited from. And so that's one of my favorite anecdotes for why I don't mind hearing from people. It's a commentary, it's a social commentary. And if I can use it to build my skills and help other people, then that's a win for me.
For about a decade, Rick Maxwell and I had a monthly column in Psychology Today on the
Hmm.
environment. And the big thing we got was being called either Nazis or,
Yep.
or communists.
Yes.
And did you get any of that? Do you get called a Nazi or a feminazi or a communist or whatever?
Not so much an email. No. It's usually more like, no, yeah, that's more of a social media thing that I get. But no, an email, it's usually more like you're just a dumb little girl kind of stuff.
Well, this wasn't
Um,
this was commentaries at the bottom of the column where people could write in,
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
which I
right.
think Psychology
Yes,
Today has
for
since
sure.
they've since discontinued that
Yeah,
opportunity. And actually, we ended up resigning. We quit. First Rick did, and then I did, because
yeah.
they were censoring us, actually. At the
Yeah,
same
right,
time as they did not allow people to call us communists and Nazis, half of,
right.
half of which was an accurate description.
Yeah.
They wanted more and more control over what we wrote. So, without asking you to give examples, you've published so much over quite a period. Have you had
Mhm.
any entanglements with editors that have made it complicated to get the science across?
No, never. I'm pretty lucky.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, no. Yeah, no. I mean, actually, I'm having one. First of all, basically, no. I mean, the bulk of my climate work is for Yale Climate Connections, which has been the best career move I could have possibly made
Right.
for a million different reasons. And so I feel extremely well supported, and I've grown so much from just working with such a bunch of all-star people. It's been absolutely
They
a
do
dream come
great
true.
work. Yeah.
I'm so lucky. Um, I am trying, I am stuck. I do have a to loop back to skiing. So I wrote an article for our own industry, where the ski industry is very climate sensitive. Here we are with this virtually snowless winter. Over the summer, before this winter even happened, I wrote an article that was critical of the ski industry, but pointed out where we can do better and exactly the things that we can change. It was accepted for publication in a trade magazine that goes to all the ski and snowboard instructors that are a member of this professional association. And I've done a bunch of writing for them. They accepted the article. I was like, that's cool because it's kind of critical, but they accepted it. A few months later, when it's actually getting ready to be published, someone above that editor pulled it, canceled it. That's the first time, and that just happened. That's the first time that I've had sort of that sensory feeling, censorship feeling. And I think when people do stuff like that, they make a bigger scandal out of it. Because why is the industry not willing to improve? Not willing to look at its own practices? An industry that's so reliant on cold weather and snow. And so now it's kind of a bigger story. And I have to figure out how to respond. But I'm 100% not letting go of this story. And I think partly like journal, the media in general is backing away from climate stories. And so I think that's similar. And I think this industry also doesn't want to criticize itself. But yeah, that just means we have to maybe change lanes or yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm just not giving up. I'm not giving up. I have too much time invested in the climate science and in the professional skiing. There's no way I am letting go of this topic. So
Wow.
stay
Boom.
tuned.
Got it. Got it. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the very, very valuable work that the Yale folks do that you're part of is public opinion.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about that. It's something you've written on because for a long time, the US public was really out of step with most of the world, certainly most of it in the
Yeah.
developed world, in not recognizing the reality of climate change.
Right.
And it was partly along partisan lines, partly
Hmm.
along gender lines.
Yep.
Things are shifting a bit now, aren't they? Where does the situation sit now? Your head's moving sort of
I'm
round
hemming
and
and hot.
round,
Yes.
backwards and forwards, sideways. This is not looking like a positive response.
No, it's just a little more. It's not shifting right now, but in general, well, it is actually. We are backsliding a little bit. So this survey is done twice a year.
Right.
And the last two surveys are showing a little bit of backsliding, as in the amount of Americans that are either alarmed or concerned about climate change. It's still a majority, it's still above 50%, but it's ticking down a little bit each survey. And so we're not, and yeah, so that the line, it's a wiggly line over time. It's still a solid majority. I think it's in the low 50s of percent now. It was I think it was like as high as 56 or something like that, 57. So yeah, it moves very slowly. I think the really important thing from that data is that the amount of climate deniers, the people who are like, no, the people who email me, those people, that's a very small amount of people. And we so often say that that's half the people. Half the people get it, and half the people are climate deniers. And that's what this research really helps you frame that it's not true. So if you want to look it up, it's called Global Warming's Six Americas, and there's six categories. And the dismissive is way out there on the end, and that's like 11%. That's all. And so that's really key value from that research. Also, for international audiences, they're now branching that out into other countries and doing that same survey across different nationalities. And it doesn't necessarily end up with six categories, you end up with four or whatever. But yeah, understanding where people are and where they're moving and what are the like topics that aren't really worth fighting for and what are the ones that are easier. Everyone hates data centers. Okay, fine. We'll work on that because shutting down a data center means shutting down a coal plant. It's a win-win. I don't really care which angle we take. And so that's how I use that data is to try to find where are the lanes I can move in that are going to have an effect to the benefit of the climate. And I might as well take a popular lane rather than an unpopular one.
Now, Colorado does some great work on the bourgeois media's coverage of climate change, both in the United States and elsewhere.
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you about that as a media professional, as a work and environmental journalist. What do you think when I was going to say open, but look at
Right.
coverage you get in Montana or Texas or DC or New York or LA? What do you
Yeah.
what do you think when you compare that with what the science is telling you?
Yeah. It the science is so alarming that editors have a hard time being accurate because it sounds out of balance. It sounds alarming. It sounds improbable. And so everyone makes like the editors, that whole idea of sort of editorial balance just has failed us on climate change. The headlines are not accurately representing how terrifying the science is. Because it just seems implausible, I guess, to these editors, or it seems like readers might push back. I don't know. So in general, we're kind of underselling it. And also using like passive voice type connections between extreme weather and the causes. Or we talk about climate change without ever using the words fossil fuels. And so it's all like this little like light touch. Then you go to a science conference and everyone's freaking out, right? Like, no, we need hammers. We don't need a light touch here. And so there's a disconnect. The scientists are like really up in arms over this. And then the media it's hard to write that headline that's as terrifying
Yeah.
as science shows us that we should be.
They're so gutless. They're so
Yeah,
gutless.
well,
I mean, well,
yeah,
you know it
yeah,
more than I
you're
do.
right.
One of the oppositions, and we're nearly at the end of our time together, and thank you for being so generous with that time. One of the oppositions that often appears in this is religion versus science, because
Sure.
one of the things that the extractive industries and Wall Street do is fund evangelical Christians' beliefs that
Hmm.
this was given to us by God, and as a consequence, fear not.
Yeah,
That religion science opposition as powerful as I'm making it out to be, or not so much?
I think it's much more ideology versus science. I think because religion can take either path. Like,
Yep.
what if God, like, why wouldn't we work just as hard to protect God's creation? I've had some great conversations with people about that exact thing. I don't think religion precludes environmental action at all. But I think it loops back to your ideology, your sort of an often political worldview on is this planet here for the taking, for the exploitation,
Yes.
or is it something that we all care for? And that's really a worldview difference, an ideology difference, not so much religion per se. So
So,
yeah.
no, I take your point of view, and again, that can be deeply related to people's ideas about the state,
Hmm.
ideas about capital,
Yep.
personal experience, notions of
Definitely.
one's own incarnation in the environment, or vice versa. And
Yes.
obviously, particularly in states that in big countries like Canada or the United States, or Russia or Australia, where there's this sense of, we built this land. And city slickers can't be trusted, to get back to an earlier conversation.
Fair, right? Yep.
And we can be. But ironically, this can lead to people being in
Yeah.
cahoots precisely with downtown Manhattan.
Right.
They
Yeah.
just may not be aware of it.
Yeah. Right. Yep. People are complicated and fascinating. I'll let you in on one other secret, probably the best. I shouldn't have saved this till now. Probably the most powerful thing I've done in my career is that I knock on doors and talk to voters obsessively all the time because how else are you going to learn that stuff? How someone, yeah, how they relate to land, how religion ties in. What about the economy? What about immigration? And I love talking to people. That's my theme, right? I love talking to people. I love hearing how they think. And so it's pretty, your heart kind of pounds. You knock on the door and say, "Hey, you want to talk, you want to talk about the election?" And I have yet to get shot. But you listen, and then you learn. And so, yes, I'm there to try to impart good information and talk about Montana's energy economy and how much better it could be. But then I also love to hear everyone's story about what shapes their worldview, and then that just builds sort of my catalog of like a little bit how people work, particularly around here. And so, yeah, and right. So, worldview, your relationship with the land, your religion, all those things. Yeah, they don't really go by the categories that we think. They I often end up really surprised, like, wow, that took a 180, you know. And so that's good. Keeps you humble that you can't always put people in those categories. So I'm from the city, or I'm from the country, or I'm rich, or I'm educated, or not. They still take surprising turns in the way they make up their narrative on what's important.
Really interesting, and I appreciate your saying that. A recent example in Britain is that the Green Party won a by-election, as they call what we would call a special election. I don't know if you heard
Uh-huh.
about this. In a traditional working class area that the Labour
Mhm.
Party, which is more or less like the Democrats, had held for a century with huge percentage wins. But the new
Wow.
insurgent, right-wing, racist, misogynistic party that is trying to appeal to disaffected working class
Uh-huh.
voters was seen as the big threat. Didn't work. The Greens won.
Didn't work. Interesting.
Greens won. How did the Greens win? Well, that's probably one of these psephological questions that isn't yet to be fully answered, but they got a very beautiful candidate who's a plumber, who during the
Ah,
campaign finished her qualification as a plasterer,
oh, yeah.
who went knocking on doors with her four dogs
Nice.
also
That's a good, safe
to
way of doing
say
it. Yep.
what matters to you,
Yeah.
who talked about how when we were all a bit younger, as she put it, although she's only in her 30s, if you worked hard, you could afford things, and now you can't. The Greens,
Yeah.
who had always been a very ecologically based party, and for
Yeah.
years had only one member of parliament, member of the House of Representatives, called the
Hmm.
House of Commons there, but now have four or five, have moved on to talking about things like working people's lives. And
Nice.
they've done it by doing what you're talking about, knocking on a door with your dogs
Yeah.
and saying, tell us what matters to you.
Yeah.
Now, as I say, the fact that she was telegenic, she was proletarian,
Uh,
she was like them, all relevant, this woman, but
yeah.
spectacular success and based on tell us what you want, not let's throw money at the campaign, which they didn't have.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Because in that, the money can have this like boomerang effect of where it's just really off-putting when you see this, and you know this money's coming from DC or whatever. It's not from your community. They don't even care about it. They just want that notch, right? They just want that seat painted in blue or red. They really do not care about community. Yeah. And actually working on not national like Senate campaigns, but more like the local or state level campaigns has been way more rewarding for that exact reason. Because now we're not like, who are you kidding? Like you're running for Senate. You've got like millions and millions of dollars in your campaign war chest. Like you're not relatable. Doesn't matter how many like ads of you in a flannel shirt. Like it's just not going to work. And both parties are doing that. But then you have these like state level candidates. They like legit. Their closet is full of flannel shirts, and so they are actually. And those are the people who I'm on the phone with much more often. Like they're the ones who are like, "Hey, what's going on with Colstrip?" That's our coal plant. You know, when's the next hearing? What are we thinking here? And like that's where the that's why I'm not going to talk to Donald Trump. I'll talk to these guys.
I understand. The New York Times today has a list of how much money is going to both parties from the data center AI industry. And we're talking about
Uh,
millions just from those
yeah.
industries.
Oh yeah.
I mean, millions. And to,
Right.
supposedly liberal candidates. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Big tech has got both sides. And that's interesting, right? Because they're like going at it from both political parties, but then regular voters of all stripes are saying no. So yeah, it is not, unlike most climate issues and energy issues, it's not falling out on those ideological lines. It's almost more like those, are you on the industry or are you just a regular person? Seems to
yeah,
be how it's
very
shaping out.
interesting.
Yep.
You managed to stay in tune with that. Well, listen, I want
Fun.
to thank you very much. Before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to add? Might be something we've touched on already where you want to say a bit more, might be something that we haven't discussed.
I, I thank you for asking that. I love that question. I would just add to listeners to think about that you have many levers in front of you that you can push and pull and otherwise. And I think dipping your toe at taking a bit of a risk, writing a letter to the editor, coming to a community meeting, talking to, like learning who your representatives are, who's your energy company. Like that is really the powerful move right now. And we hate society right now, but ultimately it's up to people and it's up to you. And so there's powerful moves you can take. They might feel scary, but they feel great actually. And so that would be my sort of closing thought to take an action. It'll feel great.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was really fun.